Hi, so in this final tutorial I'm going to talk about how we can use MIDI to control and interact with my lyric book. It's going to be a little bit more technical. Hopefully if you think you need this, you've probably already done some MIDI stuff already, so I'm not going to go too deeply into what MIDI is and how you should be using it and how what other devices you can connect with it. I'm going to assume that you've got some MIDI basics. But at its simplest, you can simply connect a cable from your iPad to, say, a keyboard, and my lyric book will start selecting patches on your keyboard. So you select a song, stuff's going to happen. So to make that happen, there's a few pieces of extra kit you might need. Now, you might be lucky if you've got a modern iPad with USB-C connector and your keyboard has a USB, one of the big square ports. You can literally just run a USB cable between them and everything will work. More likely, you're going to need some kind of interface. If we're going old school, we need a MIDI interface, a USB to MIDI interface, and these are dirt cheap. Don't bother buying expensive branded iPad ones. They all work, they all do the same thing. It's so basic, nothing can go wrong. So they're dirt cheap. One of these, £6.49 on eBay. You plug it in, USB at one end, MIDI in and MIDI out, come the other way. Of course, you don't have one of these, so you will need a camera connector kit. Well, you'll either need a USB-C to USB-A dongle, which I'm sure you've already got if you've got an iPad, or you need the camera connector kit, which converts from Lightning to USB. Now, this is the official Apple one. It's expensive. You don't need one of those. There's plenty of cheap ones on eBay that probably work, again, probably just as well. We're not looking for high performance. We're just looking for sort of physically get these connected. So we're going to have an adapter into your iPad to give us USB. And then we're going to have a cable, a USB to MIDI cable running from your adapter into, say, your keyboard, or if you're a guitarist, your guitar pedal board, or any other MIDI equipped device. And then you're kind of good to go. Alternatively, it is possible to run Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to carry MIDI. So if you're trying to run it over Wi-Fi, you will need some kind of app on your iPad. Here I've got this app, Midi Network, and it allows you to set up a network MIDI session. That's not for the faint-hearted. I've done it. If you're new, probably not the best place to start. The other easy option is Bluetooth. You can get some really nice and cheap Bluetooth MIDI devices. So for example, the M-Wave Chocolate, which I talked about in the pedal section, you can set it into MIDI mode and it will send MIDI messages over Bluetooth, and your iPad will just recognize it. So if you pair a device with Bluetooth MIDI with your iPad, that will work as well. So once it's connected, what can we do? Well, the most obvious thing we want to do is I want to be able to send a patch change to my device when I select a song. So this is useful for all sorts of reasons. At the simplest, you're a keyboard player, you select a song, it sends a message to your keyboard and it chooses the right patch for the song. If you've got a guitarist, you've got a pedal board, again, you can almost always select patches on your pedal board over MIDI using program changes. So you select the song, it sends a patch change, suddenly your pedal board will just change to the right setting. And there's a whole load of other more complicated things you can do. You can send them into main stage. A keyboard player in my 80s band has got a rack mounted MIDI switcher thing that does all sorts of voodoo, so that when it receives a patch change, all sorts of magic happens and it reconfigures about 5 different modules, all in different ways. You can do all sorts of stuff, but the basic patch change message we're going to send is going to come straight out of Litbrick. So all we need to do is go in the top right hand corner and just do, and we select set MIDI, and we get 3 little of these wheelie things, and the one on the right is the patch number. So at the minute the patch number is set to nothing, it's not doing any patch changes, and I can scroll through and set a patch number between 1 and 128. Because one of the quirks of MIDI is this number 1 to 128 is actually sent at the lowest level as 0 to 127. So some devices will call this 0 to 127 rather than 1 to 128, in which case you'll be one off. You'll figure that out fairly quickly. So if I just set this to say 5, this will send and done. Every time I select this song, it will send MIDI patch change 5. The other thing it will do is that if you connect the MIDI in and select patch and send a MIDI patch change 5 to the iPad, it will select this song. But what if I've got more than 128 sounds on my keyboard? What if I've got more than 128 songs on my iPad? And to be honest, the guys who built MIDI back in the 80s didn't think of this, because the idea of having 128 different patches memorized was ludicrous. But at some point this became necessary, and so the MIDI spec was updated and they added bank select. So bank select allows you to send 2 additional numbers, bank select high and bank select low. So if we select, so on a keyboard with more than 128 patches, they will be banked. And so I can select bank 4 patch 8. Should you be in the crazy position that you've got more than 16,000 banks, so 16,000 songs or 16,000 patches on your synth that you need to select from, we can also have banks of banks. So we have bank select high and bank select low. So if you have a device which needs these, you'll find the documentation for this on your device. But here I'm selecting sort of bank high 1, bank low 13, and patch 8 out of bank 113. If you don't want to use banks, just set them to 0. If you set the bank, then the iPad will only respond to that bank. By default, these are going to get sent and received on all channels. These are going to get sent and received on the standard channels. So let's have a look in here. So under MIDI, we can see we're going to receive patches on all channels, Omni mode. So you don't need to worry about channels. If you want to be able to send patch changes to some devices but not others, then obviously we can say, hey, look, I'm only going to listen on a particular channel. Or if I don't want my iPad to respond to patch changes, I can turn that off. Similarly, when I come to send a patch, I can say, hey, don't do it, or I can choose which channel I want to send it on. The final section down the bottom here allows us to use MIDI CCs. MIDI CCs are what things like pitch bend, volume controls, aftertouch, but they're also used to control things like your sustain pedal, and a whole bunch of them are unmapped. So there's 127 of them in total. Some of them are called general purpose controller. So we picked 16, 17, 18, 19 general purpose controller 1, 2, 3, and 4. And when the iPad receives those, it's going to think that you've pressed a pedal. Check my video about how to use Bluetooth pedals, because we're going to set up those pedals first. So set up your external pedals here. So I've got pedal 1 is going to scroll up, pedal 2 is not going to do anything, pedal 3 is going to scroll down, pedal 4 is going to be my next song. So looking down here, when it receives a message for CC16, it's going to scroll up. When it receives CC18, it's going to scroll down. When it sees CC19, it's going to go to the next song. If we need to change these, we can go through. We've got a pretty good selection. These are all of the less used CCs. Some of the CCs you're not going to want to mess with because they are used for specific things. These are the ones that you might want to reuse. So what does this allow you to do? Well, if you've got a pedal board that can send MIDI CCs, it allows you to map control page turns and use that instead of a Bluetooth page turner. The other thing you can do if you really want to get fancy, the drummer in my 80s band does this. He's running a whole load of sequences on Ableton, and at key points in the sequence he sends a MIDI CC to his iPad which turns the page for him. So he's got a PDF with 2 or 3 pages in, and it starts up on the first page, and at a key point in the song it flips to the next page. So all his song selections are done by sending MIDI patches, and all of his page turns are done using MIDI CCs. So he just he has to worry about a laptop running Ableton, and he has to worry about. But apart from that, My Lyric Book just kind of runs there and presents the information he needs when he needs it, and he doesn't need to select any songs. He doesn't need to select any pages. The information he needs just appears on a little iPhone screen, which he's got sort of nestled into his drums just as he needs it. Okay, so that's working with MIDI. It is a bit fiddly. MIDI's a bit complicated. If you're sort of not from a technical background, if you're just a random muso who wants to just make music, MIDI's maybe, but it allows you to hook together disparate bits of kit and make them behave in exactly the way that you want them to do, and it does it fast. Thanks for watching.